everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks also, Dario, for you running a very successful MEFIS Awards event last night. I understand that was the 19th edition. We always need to build on history, and innovation was really on show in those MEFI Awards. I started the GSM Awards, the GLOMOs, 29 years ago, and the 30th edition and your 20th edition will both be celebrated next year, I'm sure. I'm going to say a little bit more about satellites in relation to AI, because actually, as an enabler, it's one of the big stories of this show. There are over 68 satellite companies at this show. That's a lot more than we've ever seen before at Mobile World Congress. And in the same way as Wi-Fi and cellular came together, we're beginning to see how cellular and satellite are coming together to enable new applications, new sources of data, more and more AI. Happy to explain more about this for anybody who wants to know more about the Catapult afterwards, but we run a translation activity in the UK supporting over 1,000 UK satellite companies that actually look at innovation from a research to implementation point of view, a market translation activity. And I'm going to pick out some of those areas which I think are relevant now, as well as a bit of future gazing to see how satellite will actually open up new markets for everybody. So if we think about traditional Earth observation, we can see so much more on the Earth today. It's not just about weather forecasting. It's not just about gathering data which could help with flooding or deforestation. These are just some examples of applications as we define them from a satellite point of view. But also if we think about the broad thrust of positioning and navigation and timing, or PNT, that is a key enabler of apps, your consumer apps today. Just imagine doing market research without a location capability such as GPS, Global Positioning Systems. Just imagine how the precision from space can actually do better positioning, better navigation for you, not just as you're driving the car, but as you're looking at the mobility of footfall into retail environments. If you're thinking about positioning and navigation and timing, you will see a lot more evolution. And actually the mobile industry has benefited a lot from PNT, not just for the Earth observation type applications there, but for many apps that we have on our smartphones today. So this is a 50-year relationship where GPS started around 50 years ago, and we've built on this already. But what we're beginning to see is a lot more capability coming in through this positioning and navigation route, where we will get more positioning, more data, a key enabler for AI, clearly, but as more data sets increase in that area, we need to think about how would we use it differently. Some of the interesting examples we've done recently is looking at plastics in the ocean. How can you identify plastics in the ocean and remove them? How can you identify flooding, floodplains? But also you can see some consumer applications around transport, you can see some significant ones around retail. And as 5G is certainly one of the stories of the show today, we particularly link strongly to things like not so much the streaming of EMBB, but also some of the Internet of Things stories. How do you actually identify where certain street furniture is, where cars are? So the MMTC, Internet of Things area, and lastly, the ultra-low latency area. And as we go forward, we can see that satellite network architectures are being designed to align with 5G, and the typical terminology is NTN, non-terrestrial networks. So as cellular and satellite come together, this is the roadmap. So we can see from Release 17 from 2020, there's been a lot of engineering work in terms of how to design common architectures. And as the standards roadmap evolves, we'll see a lot more activity in that area. So it's not just an application story, it's also a big network story. Now, why is it important from a network point of view? If we think about remote areas, rural areas, in the highlands or mountains, or if we think about over the sea, there are lots of customers who may be in those locations. Hiking, traveling, perhaps shipping, freight, lots of areas in those sort of remote, rural and marine areas. And when you start to imagine that, that starts to open up new roaming opportunities, new messaging opportunities, new communications opportunities. The mobile operators cannot reach some of those areas such as the highlands, remote and rural, or the sea, partly because of capital. The cost of capital is high, but a shared satellite resource actually can help in these areas. And with some of the new constellations, which are low Earth orbit, nearer the Earth, we're going to see mega constellations that can actually really help. We already see in some parts of the world some LEO operators such as Starlink or OneWeb or the future Kuiper constellations opening up some of these new markets. And they will need mobile partners. They will need mobile ecosystem type players to help them. If we take some of the examples, we can already see some NTN early form direct-to-device handsets. Devices in the satellite world are small volume, bulky, and quite expensive. But we can start to see the convergence of terminals between cellular and satellite opening up these new markets. Initially for messaging, and then moving into voice. I'm not suggesting it's high data rate from the beginning. We already see partnerships between Apple and Globalstar and other partnerships emerging. So the reason there are 68 satellite companies at this show is people are looking at these sorts of partners to see how they can build the future of mobile with satellite. We can also see plans for 6G for around 2030, which is bringing in much more, as you can see in the bubble there, integrated NTN, integrated non-terrestrial network. Some of that integration will occur before, well before 2030, but from a standards point of view, that's the roadmap that we can see to 6G. We can also see a vision where we're bringing together much more of the human, cyber, and physical, and that really requires us to have more coverage. We all learnt during the pandemic how vital communications was, but actually satellite will play a vital part to those remote and rural areas and marine areas, much more than we've ever seen. So if we think about some future concepts, and then I'll finish, clearly we can start to see more swarms with GEO, outer Earth observation. We can start to see much more connectivity where the constellations multiply in terms of size. The traditional GEO orbits are extending as well. It's not just LEO. We can start to see some more in-satellite or in-space assembly and manufacturing, start to see some more structures. Not all of this is relevant to the mobile industry, but there's a lot of information gathering through these areas where we can have command and control communications with space. High-density VLEO, virtual LEO constellations are interesting. We may even see content delivery networks from space within this time frame. And lastly, I think if we look to the future, there's a lot of investment which is exciting people in this area. Whether it's future Earth exploration or whether it's actually new communication techniques, certainly near real-time Earth observation services will open up a lot more information. Again, not just about the weather, not just about traffic conditions, but also how we observe the planet. This is important for climate change, this is important for net zero, but it's also important for opening up new mobile applications. Happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.